So we have Julian is in Mexico, lucky guy, and won't be joining us tonight. So we just have us five. Who would like to be timekeeper and minute for this evening?
I can take the minutes.
I can take the time.
Easy, great, thank you. So did everyone get a chance to look at the October minutes? And does anyone have any edits to that?
I could offer a small change if that comes up.
Sure. Offer away.
Okay. So amendment to the motion that hasn't been made, is that right? I just got a bit confused on the very large item, very last item, because Tyler, my chair, came in and spoke, but it looks as if he's under the item that's called suggestions of individual projects, which we've actually deferred.
Okay.
So that topic at 7:15 should be changed to something like issues relating to a site plan.
Yeah. Chase, could you change that on, I think you were the minute taker for the afternoon minutes. Sure.
Yeah,
While Chase is doing that, does anyone else have any other edits? No? Okay. So does anyone want to put forward a motion to pass the minutes with the amended or Ian suggestion? Yeah.
So moved.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. Chase.
sorry.
Great.
Got those minutes.
It's funny, in the RCC, I don't know, maybe now that you're the answer, Judy's been pretty strict about everyone saying their name and like yes. Is there protocol that we should be following regarding that?
Typically,
Oh, you go ahead. We were asking you. No, we haven't officially.
Well, I think that really only started once we started doing virtual meetings.
Okay.
And then the guidance was you should do roll call vote because some people are virtual or everybody was virtual at that time. And I think a lot of committees, including the select board, have continued to sort of carry on with that, even when they're all in person. But I think if you're all in person, the hybrid meeting would be a good question. If you're all in person, you could probably just do it because you can see everybody.
Yeah.
Did you have more to add, maybe?
Well, just sometimes it's done for a contentious vote, particularly in a larger group where when they have a roll call vote and then you have to say your name and vote.
Yeah.
But it might also work for folks if you don't say your name, just say it's unanimous. And if it's not, we'll have like Cecilia is dissenting or Cecilia is no and everybody else is yes. Or Chase is abstaining.
Okay.
You could say that. Yeah.
Good to know.
Or we're a small group, we could say our name.
Ian, can you say again what we're doing with Tyler's section in the notes from last month? What I'm suggesting is the very last item in your minutes. That's what you're asking, to clarify the amendment. Oh yeah, I thought you were asking me to move them somewhere. What I was saying was that at 7:15, the item that's presently called suggestions and offers of individual projects should be changed. That was actually deferred, so that should be changed to discussion of site plan, because that's when Tyler Mateo came in and gave the information that you put in a minute.
Great, thanks, Chase. So we do have some additions and changes to the agenda. Before I talk about the ones that E and I are going to propose, I'm curious if anyone else has any additions or changes to the agenda that they would like to make known. No? Okay. So we got information from Wright, who's done a lot of work on the VELCO line and sort of regulations surrounding that. And because of sort of his hard work on that, we have new information that feels relevant to share with the community kind of ASAP. And Wright's also generous enough to come to this meeting and talk to us about that. So we'd like to add that to our agenda. So we're proposing that after we're going to talk a little bit, very briefly actually, about the posted land between Valley View Extension and ACF, that we slot in some time for Wright to update us on the research that he's done and the conversations he's had. And then we're going to strike from the agenda the 7:15 item, which is to appoint subcommittee members to draft the site plan for trails. And so that's something that Ian and I feel like we want to get started on, but we just don't have enough time in this agenda to fit everything in. And what Wright's bringing is seems important enough that we should address it now and not.
So we'll defer it, we're not abandoning it.
Yeah.
And are we going into executive session for part of that conversation?
Yes, that has been because it deals with and anyone correct me if I'm wrong here about landowner issues and lease real estate issues that I don't know if it's preferred to go into an executive session or if it's required to.
It's not necessarily required to, but because it's regarding a real estate transaction, a potential real estate transaction.
Yeah.
And there's negotiations, I assume, with VELCO. And maybe there's a kind of proposal of some sort on what they're looking for. You're able to go into executive session to discuss that if you feel that discussion, you kind of want to have a strategy to counter with VELCO.
Okay, and so for executive session means we turn off
So
the
you still have to have a
meeting
way for
room.
people to kind of be involved. So what we do with the select board is just like adjourn to another room. Are all the members here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So no one's virtual. So we could just go to room C or room A down the hall and then meet there for executive session. And that way, if anybody comes in virtually or in person, they know, okay, they're in executive session. And then when you come back to this room.
Got it.
And I've got motions if you want them.
Okay.
Is there another group meeting in room C?
That's a great question.
Not till later, I don't.
I think, yes, okay.
And I don't think mine, maybe 10 minutes.
Okay.
Just kind of an update. I kind of have two legal questions. Okay, when we get there.
And maybe what we can do is I don't actually know what's preferred. I could imagine that this being public knowledge would be, or being public hearing of this would be a good thing, but I also don't quite know about with real estate transactions what's preferred. So maybe what we can do is when that agenda item comes up, we can discuss that and kind of figure out what to do. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just gonna say, it's not just that it's a real estate, but that it's a negotiation. So
Yes.
if we make public our position, then the other side, coming up with counter
Right.
offers, it kind of shoots ourselves in the foot.
Right. Though I think, and we can get to this when we do, I think we're not at the negotiating point yet or talk about that. So yeah,
Is it just a report out?
it's kind of a report out. So what?
Okay.
So we can discuss. So thanks for.
All right, we're on to Valley View.
Yeah. Ian, am I sharing that one out or are you?
The information
Yeah.
item, and,
The value?
let's do that.
So, Nick Neveriski, let us know that he has in the past accessed ACF via Valley View extension. And that he noticed, when doing that recently, that there was a posted sign about people not having access to the community forest via Valley View extension. He contacted the landowner who he thought kind of whose land he went through. And he confirmed that there is no longer public access to community forest from Valley View extension. And so that area is now did we post it?
No, my understanding is that there's a landowner, Mike Kelly, who posted his land there. And he explained a reason in an email to Nick, I think, which was the reason being that it was people were parking vehicles there and blocking his access. So he didn't like that.
And so we will have as part of our whatever materials might come up, whether that's like signage or access on any maps or anything like that, now note that that is no longer a public access point for them.
And I mean, we have enough to do, but is that to put on the to-do list in the future? Is like, should we look for parking there? I don't even know if it's feasible.
Maybe in like the far distant future.
Right.
But that's just mostly an update so folks know. And because we really haven't publicized that as really any entry point, I think we don't need to take that out of a lot of materials. We've not added it to.
Would it be in order to put something on Front Porch Forum to that effect, or ask Mike Kelly to put it on?
I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe it's worth following up with him about whether he thinks that is necessary. I mean, I probably don't want to draw attention to it if he's like, I posted it, it's fine. So
Right, it's his property, he posted it.
right.
It's not our business.
I guess just making sure when we have maps and do the kiosk that doesn't show
Right.
We're not
an access
inviting
point.
people.
Yeah.
Or have a little circle with a line over it or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for now we're okay. And I think if we hear from Mike saying people are still accessing it, I think we could take further measures, but and I don't think there were, I don't know, maybe there were more people from that end of town accessing it.
All right, we're at our next
Next one.
application.
Okay.
To join.
I'll turn over to Ray. Maybe, I don't know, how do you all want to do the executive session or not?
Why don't we up Josh again? Do you think even the update from Josh and Wright should be an executive session?
It's not big issues. There are two that are would require, I think, Josh's before it went to the select board, which was the ultimate decider of what we do. You do. There are two legal matters that are, I think, a town attorney should get involved in. But short of that, I don't think it's. I brought it up because I didn't really know. But I can give you an overview that is general in nature and then share with you sticking points that I see. And if that's all right with
Yeah,
folks.
that's probably fine. I think all this is stuff that they provided to you as
Yes.
far as, yeah, so it's not like they don't know it. So I think if you guys started thinking like, well, we really want to negotiate over this point, then maybe you could adjourn mid-conversation if it became a point where you felt like you wanted to talk about it without their premature knowledge.
Yep. So I'll give a brief overview.
Okay.
So in the 30s and 40s, VELCO, which is based in Rutland, not to be confused with Vermont Electric Co-op in Johnson, acquired across this property a 75-foot right-of-way that adjoins a 75-foot wide Green Mountain Power right-of-way. So there's this power line right-of-way that's 150 feet. And with those easements that they acquired, they have a right to get to a public highway. And building a road across through a farmer's yard or through the forest. They want to take it a next step and have a deeded right-of-way, 25 feet wide, from Route 2 all the way up to the power line. It's the improved road that they've been maintaining for the last 4 or 5 years and continuing to improve.
But currently that's not a right of way.
It is, in the broad sense, it's a right of way because they have the right to get to from the power line right of way, they have the right to get to a public highway. And that's the way they've chosen to get to a public highway. I'm saying that not as an attorney. I'm saying it's in the easement deed that they have the right to get to a public highway. And for example, at VYCC, they go behind the East Monitor Barn to get from the public highway, Route 2, to get up into their power lines. At Valley View, they are leaving from Jericho Road and going east to get to their power lines through Valley View and the like. So they're looking where they have large tracts of land to get a deeded right of way. 25 feet wide. They've, I learned, they've had it surveyed, and I received the survey today, and I'll forward it on. It's 25 feet wide from Route 2, the parking area, all the way up through to where, if you've been up there, there's a left and a right fork above the log landing. It goes right to there. It will serve VELCO, and they probably have an agreement with Green Mountain Power, so it also would serve Green Mountain Power. It's the proposed is 2,300 feet long, approximately 25 feet wide. So it's an acre and a half of land that they're looking to get an easement on. They're proposing a fee of $8,000, $3.50 a linear foot. I spoke with a commercial appraiser today to see if that is something the town should have appraised to know if this is something we want to do, that the town's getting proper value. And after the commercial appraiser and I went back and forth, the land is already conserved with a large conservation easement, and the utility already has the right to use it. So who knows what the appraisal would be, but it's not going to be $100,000. It's going to be probably going to be nominal. And that cost for such an appraisal is $3,000 or $4,000. So we have to be careful there. I did notice in looking at the survey, and again, I'll share it with you tomorrow. Just forgotten, didn't send it out. There's a pinch point at the parking at the down near Route 2. That 25 feet will take up the end of cars that are larger than small cars. So that's something that needs to be negotiated, because parking is a premium there, and we wouldn't want to lose any opportunity for parking. I suggested in my email to VELCO, would they enter into a road maintenance agreement? Because wouldn't it be great if they were maintaining the road, which they're already maintaining, that they had a commitment to maintain it? And the report back was, we don't enter into road agreements. Okay, well, that's a point that we can have a conversation about. When I walked up there earlier in the fall, one of the spurs to the left within the right-of-way contains the remains of a new bridge. It's the bridge abutments. It's a man-made two concrete block bridge abutments, which to me, if it were on my property, I'd be concerned about the public getting hurt, because it's an unprotected concrete structure that someone could fall in. That's a conversation point that I started and got a very logical answer that isn't, we want to be able to use it in the future. That's not something we want to yield on. But, when someone puts a hazard, in my opinion, on your property, it's something that's worth a conversation about. I asked, with this new road, the upgrade to the road and the easement that they're looking for, and the left and right spur once you get up there, with all the new roads they've got, do they need to use the old Vast Trail going west to Valley View anymore? Because they've already improved roads from Jericho Road all the way up to the Kelly's property. Let's eliminate their use of the western old Vast Trail that the power company is continuing to use but not maintaining. So that's another issue that I am concerned about.
And just for clarification, what you're referring to is a section of the old Vast Trail which is not under the power lines.
That's correct.
North of the power lines at that point.
And we would have to get the town attorney. I don't know if they have the right to use that. They've been using it, but it's way outside of their utility right of way. So that's a question. They're using it's clear to me that the upgraded road and the road they want an easement on is giving them a lot more access than they used to have. So this road is becoming an important access point for them to get to adjoining parcels. And as recently as 3 or 4 weeks ago, a big excavating piece of equipment went up and went east onto Maplewood Farm and did a fair amount of damage on Maplewood Farm from my perspective, getting from A to B, and some damage under the power line on one of the upper meadows. So something to think about and talk about with them. I did have a brief conversation today with Bruce Hennessy of Maplewood Farm about the possibility, or having a conversation with him about, would Beth and he be interested in exchanging an access? So they would extinguish their rights in the old farm road up to the power line, from Route 2 up to the power line, in exchange for being able to have an easement to use the utility road up to the power line and then getting back on the farm road. And Bruce said that he'd be willing to have that conversation. I learned in my emails when you saw it, I asked if other neighboring landowners had entered into easement agreements for roads, and the Kellys had not. I'm not sure they were asked. VYCC had been asked to do that, and VYCC declined to do it. And they have a similar large road now that goes from behind the East Monitor barn up to the power line and then goes left and right from there, or east and west from there.
So by not doing it, did they reserve the right, like VYCC, to ask them to use a different
Yes,
road? Is that the advantage there?
I think that's their advantage, because they may, as the VYCC campus expands, they may find that the road that is currently being used isn't suitable and find another location. So,
And just to clarify, that's the big difference between the deeded access you're talking about for a specific place marked on a map,
right.
as opposed to just them having the easement to get from there to the road
Yes.
somehow or another.
Yep. So those are my notes to bring you up to date. And I think about it maybe at the next meeting of things you want me to get back to them on. Things that we could clarify, things that we might negotiate.
It would be interesting to see if there's like cases that they've done with other groups, and maybe just get a quick reference from those groups on, was the process smooth? Were there?
Yeah, I could ask County Forester Ethan Tapper. He has a sense of, larger parcels, what's going on those parcels, including his parcel in Bolton. So I'd be happy he's a good starting point. And I can go back to the power company and say, can you give us names of landowners who you've entered in easements with recently, maybe even along this line, that we could visit with? Yeah.
Does that seem like a worthwhile step, just in case there's something we're missing that they say, oh,
right. Yep, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because we just heard that VYCC declined, so I would go, why, what's the reason? That sounds like an interesting reason, so.
Right.
It'd be good to know maybe what other points we should consider.
would they, another question, like, would they have the option of saying, since they have the easement, that either Maplewind or Andrews Forest users would not be able to use the road?
Well, we don't want that to occur. So when you and then the select board and the town attorney and Josh look at the draft easement agreement, we would want it to be clear that this is a multi-use road, and it has to be, it's the public's use and the town's use of, I guess, official town use, and the power company's use. They need to share this road. And that would need to be spelled out in this document, which is the
Is
easement.
that a
deed.
draft easement that they gave?
Yes, but it's not related to this, it's not related to this parcel in particular. It's just a draft easement that Caitlin received 6 months ago. And I received a copy of it and I printed it out. And I'm happy to, I think that's in some of the emails I sent, but I can forward that on too.
I have 3 quick questions, but are you done?
Yeah.
So if Maple Wind were to use the utility road, but this draft easement or this easement will give the utility control of that road or not, that's what we have written into what we were just talking about. So that not only could the public, the town, Andrews users use the utility road, but Maple Wind could as well. Is that right?
Yes.
And then the bridge, I know they took the bridge out. Is that because they just don't want to maintain it? Would it be safer if they put the bridge back and just left it?
So I remember having this conversation. Do you
Right.
remember that, Cecilia?
Well, I remember the whole discussion that yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, I remember them saying like they take them out and they reuse them other places, but they keep the abutments.
Right, I
Um,
remember that.
And yeah, so because they don't want to have to put the stone, the concrete back in place for
Right.
the abutments.
But I'm just trying to figure out what's the remedy then? Do we make them, are we asking them to rip out the concrete, to fill it in with dirt, which we don't want them to do because the bridge is there for a reason, or should they put the bridge back? I don't know what they
I don't
ask
think they
is
should
about
put the
that.
bridge back because it's probably not a pedestrian friendly bridge. It probably has no guardrails.
Right.
I think they should post it and possibly put I don't know, it's probably prohibited to put a fence around it, but at least post it.
Yeah. There are occasions where you ask a utility like this or a landowner or somebody, provide us with an insurance binder. So the town would be listed as additionally insured for an event that occurred related to the bridge. And their insurance companies send them out all the time. It generally doesn't cost in this case, the utility anything or much. And that provides protection ongoing for the town and its users to have that event insured should something
Should a
happen
kid
there.
fall off the,
Yeah, should someone get hurt.
At least the town will have to pay. So the final question is all these things that we might want to request or put in, will the negotiation mean they'll start lowering it down? Well, we said 8,000 thinking that we'll just make it happen, but if you want this and this and insurance, we'll only give you 3,500 or something. Will they be, is the negotiation whether we do it at all, or will it involve price to the town?
I think it's a nominal price to both the utility and the town that probably the value is not going to go down, but they could say, you know what, we're going to walk away from the easement. We've already got access. We don't want to, this is a headache for us, for them. We don't want the headache. So they'll just walk away and just from it and continue the way it is right now.
Okay, so it could mean we get 0.
Could mean we get 0, right? Yeah. But 8,000 is, it's a lot of money, but it's not 80,000 or 800,000.
It's not changing the way the forest operates or is managed or what we can do.
Right.
We can't do.
Right. Yep.
And, oh, sorry.
Yep. I'm done.
Could get some snacks at these meetings though.
Well, and this is occasional access. I mean, can you estimate how often they'd be traveling up there with either light equipment or heavy equipment based on, I don't know, your experience previously?
The road was installed originally during the interstate installation,
Yeah, right.
and then it wasn't used after that for 50 years. So when they went up there, they were using the old farm road with small trucks. It was the installation of their desire to install new power poles up there and make their systems more resilient that required much bigger pieces of equipment and making improvements in the road and improvements or destruction within the power line right of way. It's like a residential development road system up there. It's, which is it's kind of a shame, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Marcy had a quote.
Well, I just noticed there was a question in the chat from Marcy Harding asking whether Vermont Land Trust has been involved in any way. I can bring that up again.
Which they haven't been involved up to this point.
Right.
But at some point, we would have to at least check in with them.
That's a very good point, because the utility easements going east and west are senior to the conservation easement because were recorded prior to. But this road easement would have to get the blessing of Vermont Land Trust because it would be junior to the conservation easement. So they would want to have input.
Well, really, maybe sort of closing point, if that's okay. That I know it was probably 3 months ago that you came to this meeting and we have actually had a motion to authorize you to look at the question of rights of way, maybe originally relating to the farm access to the meadow and how that would involve with other uses of the rights of way. So thanks for a really thorough looking into this and apparently expanding the scope of what you were offering originally, but it seems that that's all very valuable. So we don't mind you doing that.
Oh, good.
And of course, also thanks to Josh for coming along and keeping an ear on this conversation.
Right.
I was just going to say, I think actually, looking at the utility easement, that's what prompted, I think, rights engagement with saying, oh, as long as we're having to deal with the utility, why don't we talk to Maple Wind? So I think you had both things in mind going forward.
Yeah, because
And
that
that
would
was the
require a
proposal.
survey. So
Yeah.
the survey's there. I'll keep a couple people apprised over the next month, and maybe I come back next month.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. Did you listen to when the VELCO folks came in and chatted with the committee?
No.
Okay. Just, I wanted to let folks know, maybe it's worth, if there are more questions about this, we could maybe get like a AI generated written transcript of that. But they did come in and talk to us, and I think it was recorded.
Yeah, I don't know where the recordings were kept at that stage.
Yeah, so maybe we'd have to check. But anyway, they came in and did and sort of laid out everything. And so if that feels helpful,
That would be great. Yeah, sure.
Do you remember what month that
I
was
don't.
for the minutes?
But I think I can do some digging and I can see if I can come up with that. And if we could even just, there's got to be a way to get
Get a transcript
of that.
Sure.
Well,
But
if
there
it was
a lot
on
of
Zoom,
information.
I thought it generated a transcript, which we're doing.
Does it? That was pre-Ian, I think.
Okay.
But I can put that on my to-dos and just kind of
Great.
look at that.
Or he could just watch those 10 minutes of video.
I'd be happy to. Sure. That's a good idea.
But at least I can try to find the video.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Ray.
it.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you all. What are you doing?
Night.
Hi.
Night. Okay, thanks all for letting us slide that in. Great. That out. So now we are going to talk about applications to the ACFC. And in our sort of recommended process for how to manage applications, it was listed in there of going into executive session to discuss applications, but we talked with Josh and that is not the case, that only the select board, when folks are actually making a decision, is that sort of preferred.
Paid personnel
Yeah,
versus volunteers.
right.
Wow.
So
Because we've gone into executive
Well,
session
you should know
before,
that.
like and
Yes.
when we were considering.
It's all on the,
And
the Secretary of State website. You can pull up, if you ever have a question, It has open meeting laws, the
Mhm.
whole booklet right there. You can pull it up and look.
Yeah,
But what Josh clarified in an email, I don't know if everyone saw it, was that a board or a committee making a final appointment can go into executive session, so that routinely the select board is allowed to do that. But since we're not making a final appointment, we shouldn't be doing that. Although perhaps in the past, this committee thought it was making final appointments and therefore could. So that may be relevant or not.
and sorry, I should apologize because prior to moving on to this agenda item, I forgot to ask if the public had any comments on our last agenda item. And I know that we're trying to have that process. So I want to just back up 1 second and just ask anyone who might be joining us online or present if they had any comments to make on that last agenda item. I want to take that as a no. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm just still getting used to that. Also, I got my vaccination shot today, so I'm quite fully headed. So
Can we put the chat up on the side? Can we do it at the same time, or does it not work?
Yeah, we had one chat come through, and did I put it up? Was it
Oh,
visible?
okay.
Maybe I
Yeah.
should draw attention to it but it was a short one. I just read it out.
yeah,
Okay,
Mm,
I just didn't know if it,
mm.
because I'd have
But
to
yeah, I'll
sign
try
in
and
to see the chat.
keep an eye on that.
Okay.
And hands up, hands raised if any of those. I'll be trying to keep an eye on those.
Okay, so back to the application. So we have a number of application materials for Brad Elliott. Both his application, we have comments submitted by the public via email, and those were sent out later today or whatever, at some point this afternoon. Folks either on the website as well, so that the public can see those. And then we have the motions by both the RCC and the RTC on recommendations for Brad's application.
I made some notes about the documentation that we have available. So if it would be helpful, it's in one page.
Yeah.
And it's trying to be objective, and so it's not mostly, I think, factual rather than my opinion. So I would like to read that, maybe in the interest of time and efficiency.
Okay.
Should I do that right
Sure.
away? So my notes, I start with the process, which has been established after our joint meeting with the select board. Involves review of applications by the three committees, as you mentioned, considering the strengths and weaknesses of applicants and choosing the ones from one to several in number that the committees feel are well suited to fill their designated seats. Those committees that advise us that have designated seats. The result of the Andrews Community Forest Committee vote, as well as the notes made to support each applicant recommended by the various committees, will all be forwarded to the select board. Finally, the select board reviews the recommendations and makes appointments for each seat. So that's a summary of the process, if that's good.
Okay.
Or not.
So now I'm confused.
Okay.
Because the last time we had an applicant come that was recommended by another committee, the Trails Committee, which was Paul Hoff, and my aside is that we all agree that was handled very poorly via the select board. But when Paul came to our committee, we did not vote on him. We did not ask him questions. In fact, Nick assigned him to work on a subcommittee before the select board even voted on him and had to bring that back. So it sounds like you're saying we're now going to vote, even though another committee has voted to pass.
I'm trying to summarize the arrangement that was written down after the
Well, that's what I'm
meeting.
asking. That's my
And
question.
the Paul Half application was prior
I
to this
understand.
procedure
So
being.
that's why I'm asking. So now this applicant now will have two committees vote?
No, so we're not voting
Okay.
on his appointment. We're just voting on a recommendation,
I see.
which goes all to the select board. The select
Okay.
board will see recommendations from each of the three committees,
Okay.
as well as other information, right? We could say, here's some things to think about as a committee, or they will get the public comment.
I see.
You know, they'll see all of these things and then they'll make the decision. So in terms of Paul, that was not the process that
I
was
see.
laid out to us and that
Okay.
we're following now.
So if someone applies just for an open seat, then they would only have one committee to recommend them.
According to the.
No, they would
it's
have all
written down
three,
all
even
three.
so.
Yeah.
All three.
Oh, okay.
And what's
Unless
al-
there aren't open seats for this.
Yes. And what's also interesting, which Ian and I are just unearthing, we're like administrative archaeologists at the moment, is that we have to wait for the other two committees to make their recommendations because we have to consider those recommendations in our discussion. Which means that the timeline for when someone applies has to line up such that those two committees meet, they give us the recommendations, then we meet. So it is it's quite a protracted process. But we're just trying to, we talked with Josh a bunch about this and just been trying to do it to the letter.
Got it.
So.
Okay,
it's-
thank you for explaining it
Yeah.
because this is
Well,
quite different than our
I
last.
tried to do it in two sentences, but it needed a few more.
Thank you.
And obviously this delay that Daniel's referring to has applied in the case of Brad Elliott's application. It has occurred, but we sort of lose a month because of the monthly cycle of these three committees.
So I could best summarize this by saying all three committees must make a recommendation on any applicant regardless of what kind of seat they're applying.
Well,
Is that correct? I'm asking these guys since they've checked with Josh. Is
well-
that correct, Ian?
Yes.
And Daniel.
Okay.
Okay.
And
It's written down.
To-
Cecilia and I worked on that document.
to clarify a little bit, my understanding is that the applicants don't apply to be the representative of a specific committee. They just apply to the Andrews.
Got you.
my
Or
understanding is
select one.
that they're supposed to consider all the applicants and choose the one that they would like for their seat. It doesn't mean they have to give votes or evaluations of all three of them. They can just say, this is the one that we're suggesting and here's why. So the select board has that. If they choose to evaluate everybody who applies, that's fine.
That's my understanding.
But
of
my
what they have to
understanding
do.
is they pick one, talk about, and say that's what we want, but all of them will eventually go up to the select board and they'll look at all of them as if we have like 4,000 applicants.
But if there's only one, each committee must evaluate that applicant.
Well, if they want to, I mean, they don't even have to evaluate an applicant if they don't want to. They could just, I mean, how would they know if they like them or not? So I guess ultimately they
Okay,
should.
so that's what you're saying and what these guys are saying are two different things.
Yeah. In
That does not compute.
in the recruitment and review process to fill vacancies on the ACFC, the document, it says, review by the three committees consists of considering the strengths and weaknesses of applicants and choosing the ones that the committees feel are well suited to fill the designated seats. But it does say that all applicants are reviewed by the committee.
Right, they can be reviewed. I mean, how would you know if you want them or not? But the idea is you would forward all the ones, and that's right, it's plural. Let's say if 3 people apply and 2 of them, the Conservation Commission says, these are both good for us, they would put them forward with their reasons. They don't necessarily have to talk about any of the other applicants. They can if they want to. I mean, they've reviewed
Then
them.
we would know.
But the
that.
idea is they forward their recommendations for their seat to this committee. And then we look at it and say, that's nice. We don't have much we can add to that, or we could add to that and then forward, whatever we think is best to the select board, but it would have our evaluation plus the Conservation Commission.
I just want to be crystal clear because this is different than what happened with Paul.
Oh, yeah. it was
So
different.
if there's only one person, could the Conservation Committee say, we don't want to review that person?
Well, they would have to,
Okay.
they could just say, we don't want to, put forward that person.
I just want to make sure that we're following the rules.
That's not how we interpreted it as a Trails Committee. We submitted a vote a recorded vote on each.
And you're allowed to do
Person.
that.
We thought we had to.
Well,
We'll
Even,
get to
even if they
that's a
weren't.
good way to signal that you looked at them, but in the end, the only thing they're really asking is that each committee forwards the one or ones that they think is acceptable to hold their seat. And if they want to give their point of views on any of the others, they're certainly allowed to.
But let's be clear that the final appointment is made by the select board. So we make a recommendation, we don't make an appointment or
Right.
a final decision. All three committees advise the select board.
Yeah, I think it's more nuanced, Cecilia, than what you're saying, because when it's one application, if let's say Bob applies to the committee and the RTC says, oh, we don't think that that's like a good representative for us, and that's all the information they give, that could be a really misleading piece of information without them saying, yeah, we would recommend this person to the committee, but we just don't think that that person's going to be the right person for our representative. So I do think that when it's one application, that in order to do due diligence and be really clear about what the committees are suggesting, that they do need to say, one, whether they would want that person as a representative or not, and whether they would recommend that person. Regardless, like, I don't think they could sort of abstain from doing that.
Yeah, they could. But that's not the point. I mean, they can go above and beyond and give their evaluations, but all the original bylaws ask for is that, two of the seats are for each of the committee. One is a committee member and the other one, and it got misworded in the end, but what we have is the other one. Both of those are recommended by those committees. They don't say that they have to, vote up or down and consider anyone else. Like each of them put forward at least a person for their seat.
I thought
And
that
we
you
can't
guys
put
checked
somebody
this
in
with
somebody
Josh.
else's
You did.
seat.
And where does he say on between what Cecilia's saying and what?
Well, we could just,
I mean, we were following the exact instructions as a Trails Committee.
well,
I mean,
where are these exact instructions? Are these the ones that I drafted?
Daniel has pulled up the document that is our guiding document at this point. I mean, and I trust everybody else has it at a convenient place. I don't.
Where would we find?
We should.
I'm wondering though, is there value in pursuing this line of questioning about whether the process, I feel like maybe we've gotten sidetracked.
Yeah, what we need to do, right.
To get going, but I just wanted to make sure we're doing it correctly, and I have two different interpretations.
I think that if we've done anything incorrectly, we've gone beyond our due diligence by having
Right.
both committees do a motion on the candidate. So I think that we've definitely covered all of our bases. The question is just whether individual committees of the three need to have a motion to recommend a candidate beyond just having them as their representative. And so I can look back.
There is a funny redundancy there because thinking as a committee member, right? You're voting as a member of a committee. So like from the Trails Committee perspective, if we decided someone was not a good fit as a Trails Committee representative, then it's hard to vote for them. Even if you personally think they might be a good at-large representative, you're still voting as a Trails Committee representative. So you're really representing the Trails constituency, the Trails values, right? Of like their mission is around interconnectivity. So it wouldn't work to say we don't think they'd fit as a Trails Committee representative, but we would want them to be on the committee as a general committee if we didn't think they'd represent the Trails community well.
Well,
it's like voting twice on the same thing almost.
yeah, I guess the idea was just to make sure there is a balance on the board. So the Trails Committee can propose to, the Conservation can propose to, and then there would be the at-large. I'm confused. Where is our current directions now, whatever you guys are going from? If it's not the bylaws, not what I wrote, what are you guys going from?
It's the document that's called filling vacancies .doc or something. Actually, it's called draft 4.
Is
It's
it
the most recent one.
on the town website?
No, it's not.
Okay.
As far as I know, it was never posted.
It'd be great to have that, because I'm mostly concerned if I don't know, and it's been unclear to me in the past what exactly this committee does.
Yeah.
Because
It was circulated,
do
I
we
think, as
pick
I
from
remember. But
among what the other folks have
Mm.
said, or
No, we just forward our own recommendation, but we take into account what the other committees have offered as feedback.
right? And
So I wanted to summarize the process. That's the first of my paragraphs.
sorry.
About the procedure, but I have a paragraph about each of the committee's advice, summarizing it. But if I can, in 2 sentences, summarize Brad's application, then we can move along. Can we do that?
Yeah.
So what I wrote about Brad's application, I said Brad's October 16th, 2023 application documents a broad range of experience and contributions and commitment to public service. It provides assurances about his experience and expertise. We should also ask whether the evidence satisfies the expectations within the ACFC bylaws that state, quotes, each ACF committee member shall avail their expertise and background to the forest's management, but are elected to represent the interests of the forest and of the town. So then I
Is
have
this something you personally wrote?
that's my summary of Brad's application, which
Your
you have in
personal.
full, but I wrote that summary and I just read.
Okay, that's your personal summary.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with a little editorializing, I guess, at the end, to be honest. Well, so I continue. We have the results of votes by the Trails Committee and the Conservation Commission, and those are on the website. The Conservation Commission provides pros and cons. The pros noting Brad's detailed work ethic, his commitment and passion, and his willingness to speak up for the forest needs, as opposed to what recreationing humans want. That's more or less a quote from Judy's email. A quote, in quotes, in these times of climate extremes, forest health is more fragile and warrants more protection. An additional point was that the ACFC should look forward and not dwell on the past, end quotes. Points made on the con side by the RCC do not relate specifically to conservation, rather to personality traits, noting that Brad has angered many in the biking community and his appointment will not be well received there. Taken again from Judy's email. The RCC chair, that's Judy, notes, quotes, many people behaved poorly and said ugly things during the heated conversations about the ACF. So Brad was not alone in that. That's Judy's writing. Brad should not have the same level. Brad should not have the same level of arguments with the current committee, and I asked him to watch his temper if appointed, end quotes. That's the RCC, my summary. The Trails Committee, my summary here with a little bit of my own opinion added, maybe. The Trails Committee does not provide reasons for their votes, which they provided to us, nor any summary of discussion. However, Brad's postings to the Front Porch Forum over the last 2 or more years and his application letter provide a written record that Brad has knowledge and experience that relates to trails, including how trails facilitate human penetration of the forest and the emerging understanding of how human presence adversely affects wildlife and natural resources, and where this knowledge has been applied to trail design. Brad is persistent in emphasizing that wildlife studies show surprisingly wide influence zones around humans and the need to consider protection zones for various species, especially when their food supplies and breeding are at risk. He is concerned that humans now have the ability to access forests in increasing numbers and to travel increasing distances on trails. One of his several Front Porch Forum postings is entitled, Trails in the ACF are a given. The issue is where. So in that paragraph, I stated that the Trails Committee didn't provide any pros and cons as is suggested in the guiding principle. So I sort of went to the written record, which is primarily Front Porch Forum, and pulled out some statements, some written points that Brad has made in the written record. I thought was relevant now, since it didn't come from the Trails, it wasn't provided by Trails Committee. Final paragraph. Finally, we are aware that questions have been raised, and they're on the website now. Questions have been raised about Brad's disagreements with others and his ability to work with others in a committee context. Some refer to such disagreements as divisive. So can Brad assure us that his interactions within the ACFC, this committee, will differ from those when he was an individual wanting to communicate with a committee that had developed a reputation for being unwelcoming and unresponsive to public comment? So I guess I did a little bit more than summarize. I put a little bit of my reading of the things there. So I'll defer to others now.
I think in terms of process, we have Brad, who has been generous enough to come here to answer any of our questions. Also talk a little bit about his perspective on the committee and where he would like to see us go and what the work he would like to do. So I think, I think we could just open it up to questions for Brad. And Brad, I don't know if you have a statement you'd like to read and if that makes sense to do it now or later, but
You want to come sit at the table?
yeah,
And be on that.
how that works. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you've seen the application letter. I mean, that pretty much sums it up. When I talked to the Conservation Commission, and answered a bunch of questions, which actually there are no questions from the Trails Committee at all. And so I signed off well before there was a vote. In fact, I didn't realize there was going to be a vote. So I think it's great that the clarification came out tonight. I don't know what happened that night, but anyway, what I basically told the Conservation Commission, and I wasn't lobbying in particular to be their representative, but just in general, that I thought, we've got just some tremendous guidance for this process that exists. And I think the problem in the past hasn't been what I've said at meetings or what anyone has said at meetings. The previous members of the committee, which was a very different committee back then, somehow, I don't know, they stalled out and couldn't keep going forward. Maybe selfishly, I think it was because we were bringing up some very good points that people weren't following the guidance that was in the management plan, conservation easement, the town plan, and hundreds of scientific studies. Some people poo-pooed those. We never saw a scrap of a study that said all these other hundreds are all wet. So to me, I think we can really move forward by again, schooling ourselves in what the management plans says, the spirit and letter of that, both the past one and the one that's in production now, in the conservation easement, and in the science, and what's changed in the 5 years since the management plan was put in place. I know maybe I'm naive, but I think the answers are all there. Let's just do it and not try to renegotiate the conservation easement or renegotiate what it says in the town plan. We can wait, a couple of years. The town plan will be up. That can be changed. Zoning regs, maybe those can be changed or amended, whatever. But for now, I think we have a pretty good roadmap of which way to go. Despite what one of those letters said I'm anti-recreation. Good God. I mean, that is not true. I'm for more recreation. I mean, I really believe that by getting people into the forest and seeing it and seeing a healthy forest, not just a park necessarily, but a healthy, working, living forest with all of its ecological functions intact, they gain a new understanding for the forest and new support for conservation and recreation that doesn't mess up that forest. So hardly against recreation. I think that's one of the common grounds we have that we can all come around and talk about and figure out what are the best forms of recreation and where are the best places for those practices to be followed.
And Brad, one question I have is, I guess my interpretation of our committee's interactions with you wearing your citizen hat are that you've often said that we're not listening to your feedback.
And let's say the previous committee, not this we, but a different we.
And I'm like a year into being on the committee, but that's come up several times. And I have my own internalizing of that was I thought about it, of course, and I felt like I was incorporating your voice as one like thoughtful and passionate voice among many. And it was hard getting the feedback that because one voice is not being held above all the others, that we're not doing our job as a committee. If that makes sense. And
I didn't say that. No, I didn't get that.
I guess thinking of all the feedback that we've collected, the public input,
Everything. Yeah.
right? And that as our guiding principle as committee members.
Right.
Right. It's been hard getting the feedback that we're not listening because we're not acting on specific, well-informed and well-intended, not doubting that at all, but specific feedback. And that's felt like a tough thing to answer to, right? Because I don't know, I feel like our charge is to represent the community, and like you included in that as a voice among many. And so I guess I was wondering, like, when you envision yourself wearing a committee member hat instead of a citizen who's advocating for your vision for the forest, which is informed, like you should be in your citizen hat.
It's more than my vision. I mean, one of the things in the bylaws is that you don't bring your vision to the committee. You bring the good of the public. You bring, it's more of a holistic view. You don't let your personal passions, your personal interests dictate what you do. So it's broader than my vision. To me, it's written in the conservation easement. It's written in the town plan in many places. There's nothing in there that says it's going to be one form of recreation über alles. It's got to be everything. The easement has, I think, 6 purposes. None of those, it's not a hierarchy. It says you've got to protect the ecological functions. You've got to let the public in for recreation, which is wonderful. And others, there's education and I don't know, forestry probably in there. I forgot what the others are. But, they're not set up to be just because the one at the top, which is more about conservation protection, that isn't even the top one. It just, one of them had to be number one. But they all have to be achieved within the confines of those 428 acres. And I think they can. So anyway, I'm just saying, just wanted to stop you. It's not what I was bringing. And your point's still valid. But it's not my vision that I was trying to put forth. I guess in a way it was. My vision, though, is that is the town's, what I think is the town's vision, and informed by science and the latest things that have happened. That's all.
Okay.
It's not like I came in and I got this, be in my bonnet about, wildlife and habitat, and that's the only thing I care about, despite what some people are maybe thinking. And maybe it's my fault for not making that clear early on. But no, I think we can do all those things. We need to listen to all the voices and go to science, but where we have to. But a lot of it is just, I think, spelled out, pretty well for us in those documents and policies and protocols.
I have a follow-up.
If I answered your question.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
If you were. So my follow-up question is about that guidance, which I heard you mention at the RCC meeting, and I've heard you mention before about sort of like if we follow the guidance. And I think this is where we might have like slightly different perspectives in that. I see the guidance in the easement, which actually you just mentioned. A is to conserve productive forest land, wetlands, etc. B is to provide for non-motorized, non-commercial recreation. So we have sort of those two things. In the management plan, we have those two things held as well. I think they're reflected in the easement of promoting conservation activities and allowed uses, trail-based recreation activities such as hiking, walking, mountain biking, cross-country skiing, and other uses. We've also, the thing I think we've left out of the conversation a lot is the public engagement events and hearing from the public. And at one point, we even quantified those, and we had a pretty good balance of those two things too. We heard a lot of folks wanting to have both those things within our forest. And so my question is, and we also know that the management plan it's a living document, and we know that it is not static. And if the town is requesting something, if the select board requests something, we have to adapt to that within the management plan. The management plan isn't static. So I'm curious, I guess the first question would be, what do you take as sort of your main guiding document or main guiding sort of like points that you point to? And the second thing is, how do you think as a committee member you would sort of contribute when things get gray, when there isn't a clear defining sort of path forward of, the document says this, so we do that, and how would you navigate that? Because I think that gray area is kind of where we all feel like we're living as committee members.
Yeah. So what was the first part of that beyond the gray?
Just what sort of guiding document, when you talk about we have clear direction, what are you referring to when you say that?
I guess, let me think. Chronologically, I would say you got a town plan, and that the town itself ought to follow its own plan. In other words, there's a there's a whole section in there on how the town should manage its own lands and what it should do. And I think we have to follow that. Because we can't expect other people in town to follow it. It's not like the town plan is the law either. I mean, it really is an aspirational document. Somebody described it as that, but at least the town ought to make a pretty good run at following it where it can. And yeah, there definitely would be gray areas here and there, but boy, it's pretty explicit on how the town should manage its property. And so I think the town ought to do it that way. I mean, you can't take them to court if they don't, but the town should. I mean, a lot of work went into that, a lot of compromise, a lot of public surveys. The public voted on it. And I don't think it's something to be trifled with. The conservation easement, that grew out of the wishes of the Andrews family, the way they wanted the forest. And the agreement that they struck with VLT and the Housing Conservation Board, and later the town accepted that agreement as its own with VLT and the Conservation Board. That is a legally binding agreement, but there's subjective stuff in there. I mean, it's not like there are some very specific things in there, like you got to stay 100 feet away from the vernal pool. You can't put a trail there, and then you can't do forestry within 500 feet. There's a few things that are that specific. The other things are a little hazy, but
maybe my question, maybe I didn't ask my question well enough. So I think there are things we could do, there are directives in all these documents that would be completely within keeping of the spirit of the documents and within the letter of the documents, but that are something that would require compromise. And I'm curious how you would, as a member, so not as a sort of voice from the public, but as a member of the committee, would navigate those things where there's clear directive that we can do something, but we're needing to consider the spirit of these, we're needing to consider public input, and we're needing to consider our own sort of scientific knowledge and sort of what we're, the knowledge and expertise that we're bringing to it. And so beyond the sort of like nuts and bolts of the documents, I'm curious just how, as a member, you would work within that framework of like, we're all a little bit trying to do our best, but we know it's going to be imperfect. And compromise would have to be at the forefront.
Oh, yeah. And there are tensions between those different purposes. There definitely. I think one way that I would do it is to remember that that forest is not a monolith, that our management of it isn't a monolith. I mean, Ian Tapper went in there, and there are certain places he's, doing patch cuts, other places he's not touching. He isn't going in there peppering the whole place with patch cuts. He's doing it where it makes the most sense. And I think if we say, okay, this part of the forest, we should do this, and this part of the forest, we can do that, and thereby get the purpose of the easement. So it's not like we have to, slug it out over the whole 428 acres and come up with, we're going to do this everywhere, or we're going to do this everywhere, or we're not going to do this anywhere. So no, we can do that here, we can do this here, and where these things make the most sense. So I think that would help a lot. And even where at first we may seem at loggerheads over maybe what's going on in one of those sections, we could sit and talk about, well, how can we accommodate both of those purposes within that small area? It probably gets harder, the more you shrink down from that 428 acres. But I think that would be one approach.
Okay.
And
well, thanks. I don't want to take up too much time on my question. I know others probably have questions.
That's a good question. I was wondering if you could please share an example with us of, it doesn't have to be related to Andrews Community Forest, but a project or a committee or something that you've worked on where you've had to compromise from your position that you originally held, and how you handled that. If you could give us an example of something like that.
Yeah, you think. I think in the early days when we were coming up with the Conservation Reserve Fund, when that concept came up, so we're going way back like 23 years, I think. We didn't know what that was going to be, really. We had a rough idea. Let's ask people to vote on taxing themselves for conservation. And there was resistance back then. The big line was the town shouldn't be in the real estate business. And that, I think, was probably the reason the measure failed the first time it went to a vote, whether we should even have this fund. But then we went back, and I remember sitting with members of the select board on that and working it out and coming up with this. One of the things we came up with is, let's then put a cap on how much real estate the town could actually buy by using this fund money. Because people were afraid that it was basically going to be a kind of a slush fund, I think, for the select board sometime in the future. Probably not that one, because it was very conservative, but that a select board might run amok and just go out and buy $1 million worth of land or whatever was in the fund. So we came up with a plan where it's right in the article every year, I believe, where there's a cap of 20,000. So the select board, if it really has to, because there's no time, the opportunity is going to slip away, and it's under 20,000, they can basically write the check. I mean, you can do it like that. But if it's over 20, though, it requires a public vote. The full public has to vote on real estate matters. Oddly enough, I don't think too many real estate matters have come up. It's kind of funny, but the Andrews was an exception. That did, and it was over 20 and everybody had to vote. But anyway, that was a case where, we sat down and worked it out and came up with a pretty easy solution. That one jumps to mind right away.
I guess one other thought that I've had that I'd be interested in everyone's feedback on is we are walking this line of like all of us having a lot of interest in ecology and forest management. And that's what draws us into this. And also committing to represent people that may have different views than us, even though we all think of ourselves as people that are really involved with these issues, right? And I guess one place this has come up is like a lot of the really involved folks are large landowners and often adjacent landowners. And it offers some advantages in that the adjacent landowners see the property more often. Mm-hmm. They can flag stuff that other people might not see. Mm-hmm. But it also gets closer to a conflict of interest, right? Because everyone has a vision for their own land and their surroundings. And it's a little further away from someone that lives in the village and doesn't have any of their own land. Mm-hmm. And might have a really different vision from what they want from a public plot. I guess the same thing as like a large landholder that might have their own trails and their own access to the woods and their own vision for that versus someone living in the village that doesn't have any of their own property, mm-hmm. per se. And like as committee members, or I don't know, where's the balance of having that adjacent landowner and large landowner influence and still representing folks that are.
Are you asking Brad or are you?
I think everyone. I mean, we're all somewhere on that spectrum, right?
Well, one thing I would think is that adjacent landowner, there's going to be spillover from what happens. That's just natural, from what happens on an adjacent property onto yours. I see that on our road where, the lots are 10 to 20 acres maybe, and what one person does can really affect the others. So it's kind of neighborly, hopefully, that people work it out among themselves. For the person down in the village, I mean, the public, it still is. It's a public. They own a hunk of it, it's publicly owned, so they do have a say. They aren't, but like you say, they aren't seeing it every day. And so they're not that directly engaged in it, and they don't have that much of a personal stake in it that somebody next door might, which you probably have on top of their other interests, in that property.
If this is open to everyone, I'm trying to look for where it's in here, but the original, interim provisional committee actually listed adjacent landowners as a category that we should be recruiting from for the committee, because it's important for, public lands to have good relationships with adjacent landowners. So it's like having one representative from that group. So having VYCC on, that's one reason Daniel's application was good. And so that's actually, in many cases for public land management, sometimes they have a complete seat for adjacent landowners just to make sure that they're in the loop, because that's usually where the most conflict is. Obviously, you don't want to have the entire committee composed of that. So I'm trying to see, because I saw that in here at one point somewhere in our 365 pages. I had one quick, I know we have to move on, just maybe really concise. So one of the places we got stalled was in order to sort of implement a new trail plan, we needed to revise. It triggered a revision of the management plan because it assumed that we're now departing from if it was different enough from what was proposed, that we're now departing from the original guidance set out in that.
Yeah.
We have to revisit the management plan. In addition, we've found all kinds of things that make the management plan a little
Mhm.
complex and unwieldy that I'm sure we'd like to do, but that's one of the big tasks ahead of us, is getting that done. So if that was on your plate as a committee member, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you see would improve the management plan we have now?
Prove it. I would say, I think it's the recognition of what's changed since the first one was written. Both in, incorporating more of the science, more on, zones of influence, speaking from an ecological standpoint anyway. On recreation, I think it's the increase in technology and the marketing of the technology that puts more pressure on a forest. More people can go farther, deeper into the forest with less effort than ever. So you're going to have more people doing it, and I think we have to recognize that.
And is that just to reference mostly to say electronic, they're not electronic, electric bicycles?
That's part of it, I would think. Yeah, electric bikes, but also fat tires, power, strong. Just talking about bikes, fat tires, strong lights, but skiing too. There are better and better. God, I want one too. A set of the backcountry skis that are so much better for klutzes like me that just fall down on typical, standard skinny skis. So yeah, technology I think is changing, the face and the volume of recreation. So I think that would be important. Then I think structurally, the plan, when looking at it a million times now, it is tough to wade through, and it's tough to, it's great. There's great stuff in there, and I was on the committee that helped write it. We had a brilliant chair on that committee who did yeoman's work doing it, but man, it's tough to plow through when you're looking for something, and I think that ought to be, that can be addressed without losing any of the, I don't know what you would call it, the more informational sections that, talk about the geology and the functions, which are probably true to all forests in the Northeast, or all forests, with that mix with those natural communities. But geez, let's just get down to what the actions should be and the measurements for success on those actions. And that's 3, but the other one I think too is something for monitoring the impacts on the forest. And for that, something where we can get some good benchmarks for where we are now. Because even Arrowwood admits that, they weren't able, even after, their first initial forays in there, they said that, they were only just seeing the tip of the iceberg of what's going on in there, and really find out where all these critters are, and what's really important to the functioning of the forest. And then watching that and measuring the impacts there, and without going crazy on it. I mean, I know is what somebody once accused us of wanting to, count every last leaf and every last blade of grass and insect and its fate over time, or, I'm exaggerating that a bit, but we can't do that. But, what's practical, pick out a few things that are, if they're there, you can pretty much figure that other things that a healthy forest ought to have are there, and just watch those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was great. That was actually all good things we need to do.
I have a question for the committee members. This is just a point of discussion. So Brad, I'm not asking you, but it's going to be about you. So it's just kind of funny having a conversation with someone who's sitting there. But I want to just bring up a couple. I should say, I've known Brad for a long time since I first started working at VYCC, and I always appreciated his perspective. consider him a friend, have walked many parcels of land with him. And I am hung up on one thing, and I'm hoping the committee we can kind of discuss this a little bit. I'm curious to hear your perspective. Which is not about any balancing of conservation and recreation actually whatsoever, but is about sort of tone and approach used in discussions. And I think I'd be remiss in my position on the committee to not address some of the comments that were made by the public about Brad's comments making for an unwelcoming, hostile environment in meetings. And I have some bias there because I know Brad. And so I think I see a different perspective than other people see, but I can also put myself in other people's shoes who have different life experiences and come to this table, bring different things and see how certain tones and kind of ways of talking about community members could feel both personal and unwelcoming in this space. And I think as a committee member, I really want to if there's one thing I want to do with bringing people into this committee is to have everyone feel like their perspectives are not only welcome, but valued and listened to. And I think more than making any decision regarding any type of management plan, creating a culture in which we can feel supported by one another is the most important thing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do have,
I just wanted to make a very quick comment. Yeah. I wanted to share my appreciation for you two for really promoting that feeling and atmosphere for people to feel welcome. I feel like, and when Cecilia was also a chair, for really making people feel welcome and heard and really paying attention to the tone. I feel like I feel a shift, and I'm enjoying it. So I just wanted to recognize what you're saying around this.
Yeah.
As long as we're interrupting. As you were talking, I was like, I knew he would be perfect for this position. So thank you, because that's exactly, I think what we need, and you framed it really well.
Yeah, so just to finish up, that is where I am stuck a little bit because, and I'm wanting to hear other folks' perspectives because I appreciate most of what you said about there being a shift, and I want to make sure that that as we move forward as a committee with new members, that we continue to have an inclusive spirit that we're entering into these conversations and this hard work with. And I have, while not reservations about the person, I do have reservations about the ways in which both I've seen Brad interact as a person from the public commenting, but also what I hear from people whose opinions I do trust and value as having.
So this is an invitation for us to.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I didn't clear what to ask.
So I'm just curious. I'm curious what other people's perspectives are, and I'm feeling hung up on this, and I am not sure what my vote would be, or this is kind of a hard thing for me because we have, I think, worked really hard to create this culture, and these are real concerns I'm hearing from people in the public, and so I'm curious if people have any perspectives on that or thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I would say I hear what you're saying, and I would ask you as the candidate, what would be your position on this committee if you were part of the committee, hearing that we're really creating a culture right now of making sure everybody feels heard and welcomed into this space. And so what would be your position, especially if you hear something you disagree with? I'm asking you directly to answer to his concerns is what I'm asking.
Popping out, right?
No,
I know. I'm kidding.
I would like to hear it. Not my opinion. I would like to hear it from you.
No, I'm sure there were definitely times, when I got hot under the collar. As sitting back there, it was a lot of it. Now, and a lot of times I didn't, so I'll take issue with. I think some of that is over the course of things. If anyone wanted to sit and watch the tapes, I was, pretty polite and silent often. maybe seething inside, but silent sometimes. But it was largely just the product of feelings that not just me, that we were all being stonewalled. People were listening, but nothing was ever happening. Nothing ever changed. One trail was omitted. The others, nothing happened there. It just seemed, I think I phrased it one time. Myself and others were feeling like the fix was in that we were being stifled. There was an agenda. We weren't able to budge anyone ever. They would calmly listen, nod, and go on. And others have talked about this before. I mean, I welcome a real, true discussion. We just never were able to have any discussion, and that got irritating. I do admit at times, and I apologize for anybody who felt like I was making personal attacks, which I don't think so. Somebody made a reference to ad hominem attacks, and I was keeping it at positions. I wasn't saying that's a ugly sweater you got on, you lousy person, or anything like that. We were trying to talk about issues. That's all. And it was just very difficult to do it. But those days are gone. That's water over the dam. With you guys, I feel very comfortable. I see the same thing, with leadership that you've seen, Melissa. I probably, like a year, 2 years ago, I would have held back trying to apply, because it would have been very difficult to sit in the midst, I think, of that that ironclad informational lockdown that I felt sometimes from the committee. But now I think, we can talk about these things, and I think you guys are willing to do it. We can talk. I would look forward to talking about these issues with you guys, with, people from the public, and, do it civilly and politely, respectfully, and hopefully, based on fact, and not, just our personal positions and personal interests in a matter. I don't know if that answers. Is that enough?
Yes,
or
thank you. Yeah.
More, I don't know how clear I was, but.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up and maybe address what Daniel has put forward to us as a committee here. And my observation is, firstly, I was very troubled to see the written comments, which are now available at the in the packet for this meeting. And I was especially troubled partly by that tone, but mostly by the fact that I had never observed what was being referred to. Now, maybe I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, so I never observed it.
Yeah.
But it was a real surprise to me. And yet, while there weren't instances provided of specific cases, those comments seem to be coming from people who would be in a position to be sincere, I guess, would have been observing. They were reporting what they observed or what they felt, even though I personally hadn't observed it. But I think the behaviors, I guess, that are being described in those comments, I could sort of understand where they were coming from, because I've been on the outside of this committee for so long, and I was getting increasingly involved over the past, I guess, couple of years, and personally feeling a level of frustration, which I think Brad has just described, which was that, in a nutshell, the Trails plan was presented by Arrowwood and seemed to be considered to be unquestionable. It was all the trails, with the exception of one omitted very early, were to be implemented and all trails would be multi-use. And those assumptions never seem to be questioned, despite the fact that the committee was soliciting input in written form twice, once about the trails plan, once about the management plan. And the opinions being expressed there were obviously covered a wide spectrum, but really addressed similar points to what I think Brad and others had been raising over that period of time that I was on the outside looking in, that the opinions were being expressed, but were not affecting policy as being developed by this committee. So if that problem has disappeared, if this committee is functioning in a more open way, is more open to public input and to questioning assumptions that have previously been made or currently being made, then I really hope that we could put those concerns behind us, those concerns that were raised in the very troubling written comments. That's my response to you, Daniel, and I'm asking for committee to comment on these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, those are good comments. I think it doesn't get me over the hump in that I hear a lot about what other people have done and sort of like done in the past. And I think part of the culture of inclusivity, the culture of support that we're sort of generating is seeing others, whether it's members of the public or people sitting in these chairs, as having good intentions, of being our neighbors who tried their best and have perhaps done things imperfectly, but have really tried to do best by our whole community. And so there is something that I really struggle with in terms of pitting, like having a they even. And I think that things were done imperfectly for sure in the past. But I think they'll be done imperfectly in the future. In fact, I guarantee 100% that whoever sits on this committee will do many things imperfectly. And my hope for the future is that people will see those imperfections and still say, those are people who are our neighbors who are trying their best. And I have not heard, Brad, from you, or I have heard from you the opposite, which is these are people who are not doing their best. These are people who have bad intentions. And I think that as a person who has been on this committee and has heard that from the outside, that can feel personal because it is, you all don't have good intentions. So that's the culture I'd like to create here of us listening to people and saying like, I might disagree with you, but I hear that you're coming from a place of caring about this community. And so I'm still a little bit stuck on that because that I think is the most important thing we can do in this committee, is sort of foster that culture. And I think that begins with sort of like looking inward and be like, okay, well, how am I acting? I think we all have kind of done that with public feedback. Like, how are we acting such that the public, such that you all were sort of feeling shut out of that communication? You know, and we're like, well, what can we do better so that those people feel like they're really being heard? So I think they're the two-way street. So anyway, that's not like a question. There's no answer to that, but that's where I'm a little bit stuck.
I'd like to jump in at some point. It's because I've served on the committee with Brad since before this was the town forest, I guess, all the way up through, and know him outside of the committee as Daniel does too. And like Ian, I was surprised at the sort of strength of critique in some of those letters from people that I also really respect, who I served on the committee with over time. I didn't feel like I saw any behaviors that raised to the level of what was written there. I mean, clearly there were people disagreeing, people pushing their points, people feeling like they did their best, but weren't heard on either side. But I didn't feel as though Brad was ever personally disrespectful. I mean, the letters almost seemed more like a personal attack than anything I ever saw Brad do in a meeting. So I'm trying to figure out, so what was triggering folks so I'm not saying that they don't feel that way and they didn't see that and they're not writing true words. It's like, okay, why is this being expressed to us in a public forum in letters like this? And the only thing I can think is that people that we're sort of a new committee trying to deal in public meeting rules about working through complex things. And there's only so many things we can cover and negotiate and feel heard on and listen to the
Mhm.
others during these meetings. And so we need to do work outside in smaller groups. I'm just wondering if some of those interactions might be, the leadership of the committees or other small groups feeling like they tried to accommodate requests or whatever and didn't like that interaction, because I didn't see that behavior or anything that Brad's done in this committee or in the past as being anything other than, passionately engaging on this forest from, bringing in the issues that are important to him and a number of other people. And I think we need people with different views that are passionate and engaged. You can't say that Brad hasn't read the management plan or come prepared to the meetings, because he does. So if we can get a bunch of different people that bring all those views together, and then, as you're saying, Daniel, can work together, really listen to each other, as well as listen to everybody who's listening to us, that would be great. And so, yeah, I'm struggling too, because I didn't see the same complaints in those letters with my own eyes.
I guess my interpretation of it, and from getting to talk with Caitlin and Nick and Jesse and Jim about what didn't work for them being here, was they felt like they were really wholeheartedly trying to represent the whole community, and they synthesized the whole of the community input from the public engagements. And I think when you were saying you felt stonewalled, they're feeling like they're being hit with, you're not doing enough by trying to represent the viewpoint of everybody. And you have a passionate and informed viewpoint, but it was never enough that it was one among many. It's felt like it's had to be the absolute. And so they felt like, we're here as public servants trying to do the will of the town. We've taken our best strategies to quantify all of the feedback we've collected, but we're still being told, you're not doing it well. You're not doing enough. And they all felt like what they're doing was representing a compromise that was the voice of everyone. And so I think you're saying, I felt stonewalled because my views weren't being heard. And I think they all felt like we're being stonewalled by you because your voice is not being held as gospel. And I'm saying that's what I think they felt.
Yeah.
But they're saying we're taking everyone's input as committee members.
But then we didn't change anything. We took all this input and they were wonderful to go through and synthesize it, make it clear and look for trends. Nothing negative to say about that, and great thanks that Caitlin and others worked on that. But then we as a committee, and I blame myself because I'm on that committee, how did we use that to modify anything that we had proposed?
Our current proposal,
we just never got to that step.
Our current proposal is a lot different than the original Arrowwood proposal.
Yes, but that happened pretty recently in the history of this committee.
You mean what's different other than dropping that one trail?
Some trails.
A lot. Yeah, it looks a lot different.
Right. Yeah.
I think those changes were just from this summer.
Yeah, those were all recent. That was always, I was thinking, hopefully we'll get to that when you think of it's not just where they are on the ground, but how you manage that.
Yeah. I mean, my interpretation is, and this, I've only been on it for a year, is that where we were at really was a representation of the will of the whole public. And that's different than the will of the most vocal. And there's some of us that are willing to put a lot more time into this, and our voices get heard over and over.
Yeah.
And I'm among those too, but I try to stay conscious that our real charge is to represent everyone. And if someone was only able to vote once, show up and share feedback once, but they are home with a family, their voice should hold value as much as anyone else. If we're really thinking about a democratic process.
But when you have, and I hear what you're saying, Chase, but when, when you're talking about not my vision, it's what I was saying before, but what the conservation easement says, what the town plan says. We're not taking a vote from the public on every management action that the committee takes, right? I mean, we look at the documents and the policies. Eventually, I guess they won't, but with the management plan, the select board will vote and VLT will vote on the management plan, right? They'll approve that. I don't think there was a public vote on it. I know the select board approved it. There wasn't on that, but I think there was on the town's purchase in the terms of the conservation easement, maybe a public vote. But, those are sort of the governing documents, and a lot of the frustration was seeing a lot of those governing documents kind of being, end arounds, like the RFP being written that said, go out and find all the sensitive areas, but be sure to put a trail here, no matter where the sensitive areas are. But you got to have a trail, well, that's the RFP. That wasn't a requirement from the management plan. And yet it was stated at the public meeting several times that was a requirement, to have the connection to Sip of Sunshine. There isn't. It's not in the management plan. There's no requirement. It's a requirement of the RFP, but that was just, the committee's feeling,
Yeah.
But anyway, I think, you definitely want to listen to the public, but, in a lot of the language in favor of the proposal of the plan just said, I want it because I want it. And, with no reference to these governing documents, these governing principles, like it was kind of a free for all, what we were going to do there. And whoever had the loudest voices, would prevail, or the most voices. And you can't really manage a piece of property that way, when we have policies and protocols and easements in place to kind of guide us on how we do that.
Go ahead.
Even direct us.
I was just going to say, I'm going to have to leave at 8:00 for child care reasons.
Yeah,
I don't know if we
as
need
well.
to vote, and I don't know if we need to allow the public to weigh in on this. But thank you, Brad. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Let's let Marcy make a comment and we'll try to keep it quick because we do have to adjourn.
And take a vote.
And take a vote, yeah.
Possible, if at all possible.
Not in that order.
And quick,
Go ahead, Marcy.
Yes, thank you very much. So I was prepared to tell you why I think Brad would be an excellent choice to join the Andrews Community Forest Committee. But then this afternoon, I read the comments you received in advance of this meeting, and I feel compelled to address them. So as some of you know, I served on the Andrews Community Forest Committee back in 2019, before the current effort to develop a trail plan. I've also attended many committee meetings since then by Zoom or listened to them after the fact. And this is an aside, but I do that because I'm still avoiding unnecessary gatherings. Brad has attended many of those same meetings, probably more than I have. And I've heard Brad make verbal comments, and I've read his written comments that he submitted to the committee. I think his views are well researched and reasoned, and I have never observed the behavior others have accused Brad of. I just think those comments, when I read them, were exaggerated. I've never seen that. And somebody, I think, just mentioned watch the tapes or something. Maybe there was one outburst that I never saw, but I have not seen the behavior that is mentioned in those emails. I think Brad has pointed out shortcomings in the committee's work and places the work could be improved, but I don't agree that he's been disrespectful or argumentative. I hope Brad's ultimately given a position on the committee. Give him a shot at improving the committee's work to date with the knowledge that terms have expiration dates. I think Brad's a strong advocate for a view of the forest that balances the needs and desires of all users. And I'll just add one other thing. I know later on your agenda, there was some item that I think maybe you've eliminated now about finding somebody to draft the changes in the management plan. And Brad will probably shoot me for saying this, but I think you have a very highly qualified candidate sitting at your table. Sorry, Brad. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have
We
any?
might need to keep subsequent comments to like a minute each. Yeah.
Yep. Yep, Nancy, I see your hands up, and if you could,
I'll be quick. I'll start talking right now.
sorry,
letter.
running late.
Okay. I just wanted to add that I think the frustration was, maybe still is, wider than just Brad. I hate to sit here and hear him be put up as a boogeyman as an individual. He had the courage to speak up when people were really focused on an existing trail system and bring up wider issues, specifically related to recreation trail-based effects on conservation, something that not only Brad, but several of us had to really push for to be listened to. And I just want to put this last bee in the committee's bonnet, perhaps, that, you know, by bringing forward this new concept of recreation trail-based effects, and it is relatively new, but it's not brand new, and we don't know everything about it, but that doesn't mean we know nothing about it. It's a new concept for all kinds of trail users, and especially for hikers, mountain bikers. The thought that we might be having some previously unrecognized impacts on wildlife especially is hard. It's hard for people to accept that when they've been in the habit of just building trails and been concentrating on the ecology of the trail itself, the soil erosion, etc. This is a new concept. It's being brought forward. It's being discussed widely. Brad has brought it forward. I think that has generated a lot of the anxiety on parts of some of the members of the Trail Committee and of the Richmond Trails Committee people as well. I'm sorry to see that they do it personally. It's an important issue. I think he's at the vanguard of it. And I think it's a very important one for the committee to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And Dan Wilson.
Hey there. Yeah, I'll be quick as well. I echo what Nancy and Marcy said. I think this, in some ways, Brad is a lightning rod for what's actually just a very complex issue. I've always seen him to be a thoughtful listener and very respectful in how he points out his ideas. And I think all this incredible work he's done for Richmond and both conservation and recreation over the years, he's earned a seat at this table. And I have a high degree of confidence that if you put him on the committee, you would find that he's collaborative and a very productive voice in this process. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Okay. Unless anyone else has a comment from the public, I think we should vote on this. And so we only need one vote, which is to recommend or not recommend Brad's application to the select board. Remember, the select board then has the final vote and they take into consideration our recommendation as well as the other.
I don't know if we need to look at this. These are the vacancies that exist currently. The one associated with the Conservation Commission expires 2026, and the seat not aligned, not recommended by either body is actually ends next year.
Where's that one? Oh, the top line.
I just want to
That's at large.
note that Cecilia only has about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
So
Yep.
move forward.
So I guess, yeah, I'm looking at should we have a call for a motion specific to one of these
No.
vacancies?
No, we don't
Okay.
need to do that. Just a recommendation or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you be more comfortable if I scrammed? Would it? I mean,
I think that's up to you, Brad. I think you're welcome to stay here.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a great discussion so far. If you think it's been frank enough with me here, I'm happy.
Let's see, so a motion to, well, we'll say it this way, maybe a motion to recommend Brad Elliott to the select board for a position on the Andrews Community Forest Committee. So a yes vote would be a recommendation and a no vote would be a not a recommendation.
So do we need somebody to make that motion, somebody to second it?
Yeah.
Okay, I make the motion that we recommend Brad Elliott be considered by the select board to be a member of our committee. Is that right? If I phrase that right.
I'll second it.
Further discussion?
So discussion of the motion. Are you calling the question?
He's drinking
I
water.
was drinking some tea.
He will.
You need that.
Wait, what do I need to do? Public. What?
Yeah, you call the vote now because it's been
Oh,
moved
okay.
and seconded.
Okay, so then I
discuss.
okay, so members can vote, do I?
Yeah.
Okay.
We usually say how many are aye, how many are nay, how many abstain.
So we don't just go around and say yes or no.
We could do that too.
Okay.
That's a roll call vote.
You call a roll call vote? I'm letting it go.
I guess I'll start. I'm gonna vote nay.
I'm gonna vote aye.
Um,
We can come back to you.
Yeah, come back. You go
I
ahead.
vote yes.
Aye.
Daniel, yes, and I look forward to continuing with the spirit of collaboration and with the great. So motion passed. Cecilia, if you want to leave, you can. We can finish up a couple of things. We're not going to go through the rest of our agenda items, but we can at least make plans for.
Is there anything you need to vote? Because once I leave, quorum is gone.
Oh yeah, right.
The next well, we don't have to vote, but the next meeting.
It's the 18th, right? Did somebody write that?
Yes. So
If everyone has looked at the kiosk material, could we have a very rapid vote on,
Oh, yeah.
on
I just had one quick thing to add to the kiosk material. I'm proposing that to the list of rules, we add drones prohibited.
oh,
Wait a minute. Why?
that?
Drones,
A prohibition on drones.
prohibiting drones.
Yeah, because just for scientific reasons, we use them a lot to monitor gypsy moth infestations, flooding, all kinds of things.
Recreational use of drones.
Oh,
I filmed music videos there with drones on.
but people like views of the
It seems like a bigger conversation.
Okay.
It's a good conversation.
Okay.
and
They drive me crazy when I was on top of the Whites. I'm like on top of Mount Adams, and there's like two drones just
Camel's
zipping.
Hump. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, really?
And because these are, it says explicitly at the top that these are subject to amendment, that's something we could amend really easily if we decide. We just print the new one.
Okay.
But that's a great point.
I-
We back pocket it. Parking lot it.
Didn't we decide hunting is also permitted after dark? Didn't we change?
There.
I know, but didn't we change that to something like hunting is permitted pre-dawn and post-dusk as per state regulations, something like that? Because otherwise it sounds like we're suddenly giving permission for people to go out and use flashlights to hunt, which is not, it's just to accommodate that sort of pre-dawn, post-sunset as per state regulations, state hunting regulations. Or can we just put that in somehow as per?
Yes, we could add, so a couple of things. So we could add to that, so the hunting is allowed per state regulation. So we could just add that. So
Yeah.
language would be, per state regulation. That would be easy enough to do. Because I agree, Cecilia, I saw the language in that.
We discussed it and I thought we arrived on something different in my notes, which I could resurrect, but that basically captures it.
So hunting to be allowed
And that was what we came up with at our last meeting,
pre-dawn.
that
and
exact thing.
Post dusk.
What?
Okay.
Hunting, so the edits to be made after last meeting were, number one, said hunting may also be in the forest before dawn and after dark as per state regulation.
After sunset. I think the state goes to
Does the
sunset.
sunset?
Yeah,
Okay. I'm reading from their last
Before
minutes.
dawn.
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
after sunset.
thank you.
And then number three, bikes only on designated trails.
As opposed to authorize.
And
As
then,
opposed to authorize, designated.
Sure.
all trails to red and parentheses pedestrian and bikes. And then that didn't happen. I guess we haven't made these
Yeah.
edits yet.
No, those edits did happen.
The one I saw still had a dotted red trail that said pedestrian only.
Which is the pedestrian only, yeah.
That was not what we,
That's the November 9th thing. I thought anything trails and roads today, because it is pedestrian.
there's a motion, it's not currently a pedestrian trail, the way I understand it. We're proposing making it a pedestrian trail with the revised management plan because there will be alternatives there. So there's going to be, a new, I don't know what it's called.
But are these not here? I thought we were only showing trails that were actually there right now.
They are there now.
And there are alternatives. I thought we were just sort of deciding.
Yeah, I mean,
We don't have
it's
to
not a
change it
do or
later.
die
Right, right.
thing, but trail was built by volunteers in the trail committee as a multi-use trail, and it was never built as a pedestrian trail. So to just go ahead and change that now, I think would be disingenuous with the intent of that trail when it was built.
And you're saying that in our current trail plan, it will move to pedestrian?
Move to, but as a part of that move, there will also be an additional option.
But probably not down here. I didn't think it was adding. I'm just thinking it'll be harder to change it from multi-use to pedestrian. People will feel like they've lost something.
Yeah, I don't think that'll
And
be
I didn't
hard.
think that we were gonna add anything particularly big down here. There's gonna be something over there, but
Okay. Yeah, I mean, personally, it's not a make or break thing. I just think it's a bigger conversation. Taking something that's currently a multi-use trail and just changing it to a pedestrian trail.
Right, when we could, remember the whole idea of doing this was that we wanted to get up something now.
Yeah.
So I do think we could make that a multi-use trail. We're not losing anything. No one's really gonna.
That's was my point.
And then we can revisit this in the spring when the trails are gonna open again and that can change.
Yeah.
I think
I
we
think
could,
that's a good idea.
let's move it back.
We've had this exact same conversation. This is the
Last-
third time and we've come to the
It is.
same conclusion. It just,
You
the
got
change
this
hasn't
one.
happened.
That one's just going to multi-use,
so
Dane is Quorum. Forget your
there are reasons
conversation.
people are frustrated with our committee because we do this.
Yeah.
And I note that this draft here says the following are subject to change at the top of all of the numbered things.
Yeah,
Um,
so we'll do that. Let's change that one back to multi-use. Change the language for hunting to per state regulation.
Do we want to add the pre-dusk, post-sunset? Because it's up there is mostly just about the time of day in number one.
Right, I think if we have per state, the people know that means like. you
Okay,
can't hunt
then we
that
don't
dark,
have to
but,
say permitted after dark. Okay.
Hunter should know what the regulation.
Any other changes? I think those two seem very easy.
and we can vote,
These are
you
great.
think we can vote subject to those
Yes.
two changes?
I think we can do that. So I'm gonna propose a motion to, for us to pass, I don't know what we say, pass these, the trail regulation, the regulations and the map. And be able to, or what's the word I want to use, per the changes for adding per state regulation to the hunting item. And to return the trail from pedestrian to multi-use of Dana's climb.
Second,
So that's a change, the second is a change to the map and the first is a change to the text.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Mhm.
What was that? Yeah,
I hope I got it.
I'm sure.
We'll see. You all know.
He has it in the notes from last time.
Yeah.
the exact same thing.
Yeah, I should read this back to you in a minute when we're done here, Chase.
Should we call the vote?
Yeah.
I think we all know what the change already.
Yeah. So Chase seconded that motion.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, so I will make those two changes and forward the revised PDF to, I guess it's Chase and Melissa. Yeah, and between the two of you, you can get them printed, plasticized and put up on
And will
the
you
kiosk.
Please let me know if it gets cheesy or dicey, like laminating stuff at your school. I'll just take it.
The librarian at
We
my
don't
school,
get in trouble.
I got ins of the librarian.
Okay,
She,
you can tell I
she
haven't been on it.
guards the laminator and I passed her laminator test. I don't mess with her laminator.
So it's more about like breaking the
Yeah.
laminator, not that you're like taking plastic from the school.
Yeah,
I got you.
or laminating your hand and then
No, oh, sorry.
Oh,
Oh my God.
well,
sticking it in hot liquid.
You guys are
I'm
packing up.
noticing that there's one other thing on the agenda which would be really nice to move ahead, in my opinion, which would be to push ahead with an RFP for a person to help us write a revised management plan, and working with town officials, with town manager, of course, at the same time to be efficient about that. And I think I'm proposing, I mean, it's in the agenda that we identify a subcommittee that can keep working on this between our monthly meetings.
That would be great. I'm afraid I can't be on that subcommittee, but I would support it.
Yeah, and the subcommittee has to be 4 people.
3, right? We don't want to.
I mean, it has to be a maximum of 4. It has to be less than a quorum. The quorum is 5. Well,
We only have,
we only
what,
have
7 people on the committee.
Yeah, so a subcommittee is how many?
I think 3 would be the max.
3 would be yeah, would certainly be legal.
4, 5. Yeah, 4 would. be the
I nominate Daniel, if he's willing to serve, because of his, experience across a range of
Yes.
things.
I second.
I would be happy to do that. We can also do that. I don't think we have to vote on, but if others are interested, they can let me know. And I can also just start to work on that and share out that information.
Any other volunteers to make up 3? I personally, I
I
would.
was gonna say, can we
enjoy doing-
volunteer you, Ian?
Is it the subcommittee to solicit RFPs?
To work on the draft, there was a draft there, but to work with Josh and further develop the draft, and would we need to see it again, the draft, before you can submit it? Or
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a draft in the package, which is kind of a skeleton based on a previous RFP, but it needs padding out with specifications in about 3 areas, I think, before we can forward it.
Yeah.
To Josh.
Yeah,
So-
We should wrap up.
that's fine.
I think we should wrap up because Daniel's color has changed to gray and he needs to go home.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I'm taking care of you in gray.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that, and I'll send out
Celia.
emails to members if anyone's interested. Figure out who else when I get.
And Cecilia's going to vote to adjourn. Do we need a quorum to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thanks, Cecilia.
See you, Cecilia.
That would be a problem if we need a quorum to adjourn and we didn't have it.
And you stay?
I better stop the recording before we get into trouble.